We live? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, episode 3 of Hex Live Card Review. Tonight we're going to be going over the Ruby set with the intent of looking at PvP. We will be covering both constructed and draft formats. I am Pun Intelligent. With me tonight is Wretched. He is one of our experienced TCG card reviewers. We also have Baron, another extremely experienced TCG player and card reviewer. And our little master of puppets running the show here, Chanson.
Hi.
So, the first card we're going to be looking at, if you guys would like to join us, hex-datamine.com is where we're looking at the cards. Sort by the filters Ruby and game type PvP. The first card is Ash Harpy. So, Ash Harpy is a 5-cost card, has the ability Flight. It has a basic speed ability, which is sacrifice this troop to deal 2 damage to each troop without Flight and each champion. When you play a non-resource card, if it's the second non-resource card you played this turn, put this troop from your graveyard into your hand. So basically, play 2 spells while this guy's in your graveyard, right back in your hand. You can blow people up with them again.
So I used this card in a draft. It to pretty good effect. A lot of creatures in this set aren't very tough, so 2 damage will actually kill a great number of guys, especially on the ground. And what's more, since he dies and comes back into play fairly often, he's really, really good with Inspire. In particular, the one I commented with was Inspire. Whenever he deals damage to a champion, you draw a card. Then you can sacrifice him, deal damage to a champion, and continue drawing cards, and that will stack up. I think this guy has a lot of potential for drafts. Even in Constructed, he's a really slow, sort of grindy removal spell type finisher, but he does clear the ground and come back later to win the game.
Yeah, in draft he's a house. Most of the troops at common and uncommon are going to have 2 or less toughness, so he's like a flying kill everything if you want to guy that you can get back, which is pretty insane. In Constructed, there's going to be a lot more creatures that survive his effect, so I don't think he's going to be quite as good in Constructed. I guess he has a chance at seeing play. The recursion for 0 mana is pretty nice. But as a troop in Constructed, he's not that good. Like being a 5-cost 2-power guy, he's just going to get outclassed in the air, I think. So, yeah, draft super good, Constructed possibly.
All right. I agree. Drafted, he's pretty baller. He can be pretty good in some constructed decks as well. The reusable nuke ability, I think, is super awesome, and it was pretty cool to see in draft mode when we were playing our simulated drafts, which I guess we should talk about for a second. We actually printed up a set of the current cards. And have been drafting and playing games with them to try to get a better feel for the cards, so we can give you a more informed opinion. And this card was pretty strong despite its high cost.
I want to point out also that the fact you get sacrificed to deal damage to players is actually pretty good. That means that you can go long and kill them in 10 turns even without being able to attack.
That's true. And the fact that he continues to get buff off of Inspire triggers, that was pretty cool. We only saw it a little bit in the draft, but in Constructed, I could see him keep on acquiring all the Inspire triggers to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on to the next card, we're skipping Blaze Elemental since that is a token. And yes, Matt, autism tabs. He doesn't like closing his tabs.
Thanks.
So the next card, Blood Crazed Zealot. Blood Crazed Zealot is a 4-casting cost, 3/2 speed, who cannot block. So this guy just comes in and starts walloping right away, but he can't do much on you for the defensive side.
So this is a pretty mediocre creature. I guess he's got 3 power and haste, which is pretty strong, but at 4 costs with no other abilities and even a negative, I certainly would not play him in Constructed unless I absolutely had to. I think there are much better guys, certainly, in Constructed than this guy. And even in Draft, the fact that he only has 2 toughness for 4 mana is pretty unimpressive. Like, he'll die to almost any 2-drop. That's pretty bad.
In Draft, I actually think he could be a little better than we're giving him credit for. 3 power with haste is not bad and can actually, surprise people with extra damage. It's not great, but again, we're dealing with just this one set, so there's not a whole lot of steep competition. I could easily see myself playing this in Draft in the right deck. For Constructed, though, at 4 cost, you're going to be able to find other creatures or spells that are just better than this thing. Even though he's got the orc type and he can gain benefits from other orcs, I just think you're going to find better things.
Okay, so moving on to our next card, we have Burn. Burn is a 1-mana casting cost. It is a quick action, usable at any time. 2 damage to any champion or troop. Just a super basic little nuke.
This is really the gold standard, or I guess perhaps the copper standard for this set. It is a very sort of basic ability. In Magic, this card was called Shock, and it basically tells you what creature is good enough, or what kind of creatures are good enough for limited. So this is a common, so you'll see them fairly often, and they deal 2 damage. That means that in Draft, 3 toughness creatures or higher are worth more. So 2 damage really is kind of like a turn. In Constructed, burn spells have to be able to do multiple things, including go to the face fairly hard, and 2 damage is simply not enough with 20 life. But in Limited, this is really the removal spell in red that you're going to see a lot of. So obviously pick them up, they'll kill every small guy, and try to figure out some other way to deal with guys with toughness 3 or greater.
Yeah, in Draft, super solid. It's a removal spell at quick action speed. That's always going to be a high pick. In Magic, we get kind of spoiled with Lightning Bolt, the same cost for 3 damage. But even when you have Shock, it's good enough. So this card, it's definitely going to be awesome in Draft. I also think it's going to be good in Constructed. Again, there's not a whole lot of cards. This only costs 1. I think it's the only removal spell that costs 1. And it can go to the face to finish off your opponent if you get into a stall. So, yeah, this card's very good. I think it's going to see a lot of play in Constructed until there's just something better than it.
I actually really disagree. I think that it'll definitely get replaced by Ragefire. Basically, every time someone would play Burn, they'll play Ragefire instead. Which
Ragefire costs 2 and is a basic action instead of quick action, so they have different purposes a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Ragefire it does look a lot cooler, and the escalation is pretty nuts. I still think that people are going to be in the market for more removal, and this is an instant, and Power of Instance is
True.
really
True.
good.
And 1 mana, that's cheap.
Yeah, that lets you curve out a little more. You're more likely to play a relevant creature plus cast Burn in the same turn than play creature and cast Ragefire.
I'll concede that.
Now, how many faces are in that picture? At least 3.
1.
For the flavor draft?
Yeah.
Let's just move on.
Alright. Next card.
So moving on, Burn to the Ground. Burn to the Ground has no real casting cost. There's no requirement to play it except the 2 red threshold. It just has a straight X where however much you pay, that's how much damage you can deal to any troop or champion. It is only 1 target and it is a basic action speed, but obviously this can be a pretty big nuke.
Okay, so this is basically the best Blaze ever printed. In that it doesn't have any starting mana of the 1 red or anything. It's just pay X, you deal X damage. This is really, really good in Limited. These kind of effects have always been very powerful. They kill the opponent's best creature or kill the opponent. The fact that it can target either is good. The fact that it just deals X damage is great. It's only an uncommon, so you have to be prepared to see them fairly often. There will be a couple in every draft in all likelihood, so be aware of that. In Constructed, this is a fine finisher. On 5 or 6 mana, it does a very significant amount of damage to the opponent and can kill basically any creature in the set. No creature is so big that you can't pretty much easily kill it with Burn to the Ground. So I expect to see a lot of play of this in the mid-range red decks, as well as every draft deck that will play red.
Yeah, for limited, this card is even better than Burn. Being able to deal with bigger creatures is just awesome. This will put you into red if it's your first pack. As far as Constructed, like comparing this to Magic, typical Fireball type spells don't usually see a lot of play, but I think this actually has a chance of seeing play, or I think it actually will see play because it is cheaper than Fireballs. You don't have to pay the 1 and then X, it's just X. And there's not a whole lot of creatures that can survive this, so against like the late game cards that you're gonna be up against when your fast rush stalls out, this will just answer any problem or just kill them.
Yep. The only real limiter on the playability of this card is the combination of it being basic action and having 2 red thresholds. So if you're just barely splashing red in your deck, you might not be looking for this. Burns will probably be more useful, but I think it'll see a lot of play anyways. Next card we're looking at is Elimination Specialist. Elimination Specialist is a forecasting cost troop. When this troop enters play, deal X damage divided as you choose among any number of target troops and your champions, where X is the number of artifacts you control. So obviously he's meant for an artifact deck. If you've got a couple artifacts in your deck in limited, he's probably okay to play since he's a 3/2 for 4. But overall, meant for artifacts.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how good the red and artifacts deck is. I did sort of try to draft that. It didn't really work out. There aren't a whole lot of great artifacts as the problem, so you end up drafting a bunch of poop to make your random cards good. However, if you do get a couple of the playable artifact guys or a couple other random things, he's a removal spell, occasionally in limited. He'll probably deal 1 or 2 damage, which is still fine, and he has a decent sized body. So he's kind of like the worst Flametongue Gavu ever printed, but that's, there's a lot of room below Flametongue Gavu, so.
Yeah, in draft, this guy is like pretty narrow. I mean, if you don't have the artifacts, he's just a 3/2 for 4, which is not that exciting. Like we were talking about Blood Craze Zealot not being that great anyways, and this guy, he lacks speed. I guess he can block, which is all right. I mean, if you're already in the artifact deck, you would pick this high, obviously, but I wouldn't first pick a card like this hoping to get into the artifact deck because you're just wasting a pick on a card that's maybe going to be good. As far as Constructed, though, I think this could see play depending on like what other artifact cards and cards that care about artifacts we see. That seems to be like one of the things that Cryptozoic is talking about, like, oh, there's artifact deck and dwarfs like artifacts. And we've seen some cool cards that like get cheaper or do stuff when you have artifacts, but nothing that like straight up kills the opponent and this or the guys. And this would be the card you're looking for in that deck if actually turns out to be decent and constructed. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that in Constructed, I mean, it seems to be a little bit slow. Like, just the base stats at 3/2 or 4 is not really great for, well, what I was looking for Constructed, but this format seems to be, like, sort of inefficient enough that this guy could very well be decent if you can control the number of artifacts in your deck, but it would require a very high number for Constructed. Like, you don't want to have 3 and you play this guy every time, otherwise it's not good enough.
Yeah, I suppose it should specify you're not playing this for his creature stats. You'd be playing this for the deal X damage wherever you want.
Yeah, specifically divided is a pretty cool factor too. So if they've got a bunch of weak little dudes, you can take out 1 or 2 of them pretty easily.
Yeah,
in the artifact deck.
Yeah, just got to get your inspiration machine up. Just create a random artifact every turn. Throw them out.
Yeah, just got to do that.
Yeah. All right.